Hi guys, this is Anna and this is going to be my part 2 of the books I have read in the month of January 2017. And in this video I think I'll just talk about 4 books, and I'm gonna leave 3 books I've never talked about and 2 I had separate reviews on for my last update for the books I've read. So in this one will be 4 books. I think I'll start with the one I liked the least, and that was the last short story by Sergey Dovlatov called FiIial. And this completes this particular book. It's a collection of, it's in Russian, and it's a collection of 3 stories. I have now read all 3 novellas. So FiIial was the last one, and the entire action in this book happened in United States, so post movement of Dovlatov from the Soviet Union to America. So it takes place either in New York or mostly in Los Angeles, and it's a political satire. Bits of it were funny, and so far I think that was one of the best bits I've read by him, and overall I gave it a solid 3 stars. But compared to everything else I've been reading recently, this is definitely one of my least favorite, and as I have mentioned before, I don't think Sergey Dovlatov is my author. So for now, at least, maybe for this year, maybe for the next several years, I think this is going to be the last work I have read by him. There are better books for me to enjoy. Another book I have read in the month of January and also given 3 stars to, it wasn't one of my favorite. I read it electronically. It was called The Boyne and Striped Pajamas by John Boyne. It's an Irish author. It's a very short novel written from the child's point of view. And as the title suggests, it deals with the Striped Pajamas of Holocaust. So a little boy whose father is made an offer to work as a commandant of Auschwitz has to leave his beloved friends and his favorite apartment in Berlin and move pretty much to what used to be Poland, which is now Poland as well, to Auschwitz. And somehow he's so innocent that he has no idea where he moved. So he every day from the window in his bedroom observes this strange concentration camp with lots and lots of people all dressed the same, and it does not click in his mind that something is wrong with this whole arrangement. I found the book extremely naive, and I have listened to several interviews with the author, and he said that he was trying to show it a naive point of view, because when we talk about Holocaust, when we talk about Auschwitz, we obviously look at it from our point of view, from the current point of view, so we know what has happened. But if you place yourself back in the 1940s, a lot of people, they just could not accept the fact that such atrocity has taken place, and that was he was trying to convey with this book. It does not end well for the main protagonist of this book. I'm not going to tell you more about what happens. I'm just going to mention that he befriends a little boy in the concentration camp who has the same birthday as him. They're the same age. And because he's quite lonely, this is the only friend he actually gets in the area. The book was really nicely written. I think if you have a small child, that could be a nice point to introduce them to the history, but on the other hand, I might be slightly reticent about it, because it just... I know what the author wanted to convey, but look, I live now, and I can't just ignore the fact that this is wrong, and I was brought up with that history in mind. So I don't know, I know a lot of people have huge love for the book, a lot of people gave it 4 or 5 stars, but I just somehow was not for me. It's not bad, it is historically accurate in a way, but honestly, the little boy and his older sister, they were just so annoying. They kept grating on me when I was reading it. So I've read it in about 1 day, and I think if I put it down, I wouldn't have finished it. Third book I have read, and that was a little bit of a test for me. So it's a book called The Imaginary Girlfriend by George Irving, and I have never read anything by John Irving. And his novel, if you read him, you know they're quite chunky. There are several I want to read, like The Prayer for Owen Meany, for example. But because they're so chunky, I wanted just to make sure like, I knew what I was getting into, and I decided to start with his biography, which is a very small book, and it's a very interesting biography because he just mainly talks about his hobby, which is something I'm not interested at all. I'm absolutely not interested in any martial arts whatsoever. So I thought, if you can read this book and if you're going to like him talking about wrestling, which is completely not me, then this is your author. If he can convince me that there's still something exciting about this bizarre preoccupation men do, then fine. And you know what? I actually ended up liking it. I absolutely loved the language it was written in. He came up as a very intriguing character. I really want to get to know him better. I wouldn't say he completely turned me into wrestling. There were lots of factual information in there which was just going over my head, like all the different weight categories and all the training they had to do and how much he had basically abused his body. But in between his stories about wrestling, there was lots of other bits about him, like he traveled to Vienna, for example, when he was still a student, and how he formed a relationship with other authors, how he was teaching writing, creative writing, how George Orwell was one of his friends. I absolutely fell in love with his writing, so I definitely will read more John Irving soon. I think he's going to be one of the authors I would like to just read the entire biography of. I know he's quite prolific, but that's a good thing because I seem to like him. I gave his book 4 stars, and honestly, for a wrestling book, 4 stars, it must be really good. If you are a fan of wrestling, you will probably give it more than 5, like you will want to give it a 10. It's really good. I'm so pleased I actually read something which was relatively short, just to make sure it was something for me, and it definitely is something for me. Finally, the last book I want to talk about in this video, and this is George Orwell, 1984, a well-loved book by many of you. I have read it, bits of it, a long time ago, being translated into Russian, but this is the first time I have actually read it in English. And I've read this whole book in 2 sittings, in 2 evenings. I loved it so much. I absolutely love this book. I cannot recommend it highly enough. This is definitely 5.5 stars for me. If I could give it more than 5, I would give it more than 5. You can just take any passage from this book and quote it, and it's so relatable to so many things which has happened in the past and happening in our society right now. So it's extremely current in its approach. So it was an interesting fact that I've read last week on Amazon in America. They have sold out of all of these copies due to the whole recent Trump things. I'm not going to go into politics, but I love this book. Honestly, it's so beautifully written, and it's so terrifying in the same time. Like it grips you, and you want to keep reading it, and you know it's not going to end well, and at the same time, you just cannot put it down. The thing I found the most frightening about the book is the language changes. The fact that in the society described in this utopian world, they were trying to simplify the language. I think to me that would be one of the worst atrocities to happen and affect me if a language is changing and simplifying with every generation. But it does have some historical relevance, because that's exactly what happened. So when the Nazis went into Poland in 1939, they decided that Polish people, like the native Poles and little Jews, before they created concentration camps, they didn't need to know any language. So they only were allowed to do 4 years of education. That refers to Soviet Union, because after Bolsheviks revolution in 1920, there was a huge language reform where they completely simplified Russian. They changed the alphabet. There was a decision to have a new dictionary published, so a lot of the words which you would have seen, say, in traditional Russian, 19th century Russian language, has become obsolete in the 20th century Russian language. So there is a lot of connection with this. There are some phrases which, when you read this book, you just think to yourself, yeah, it makes perfect sense, and yes, I can relate it, and so and so and so. I don't want to spoil the plot, I don't want to give you too many things, but I have written so many things out of it, and I thought about them long and hard, and I could just see so many parallels. the statement that he talks about, that if the party wants you to believe that the sky is a different color, you just have to absolutely accept it. This comes straight from one of the Bolshevik speeches, the party speeches in 1928. Several years ago, I read Radinsky's biography of Stalin, and I remember that passage there, that if the party tells you that the sky is a different color, 24 hours later, this is what you believe as a doctrine. It doesn't matter if you look at it and it looks different. The party tells you it is so you accept it. It has a lot of connections with Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment, which I also read this month, and I'll talk about it in the next video. But having to read one after another, I think was such a treat, because I could see the parallels between the two books. I love George Orwell's writing. I have a lot of his works at home. I have his essays, I have his fiction. So my plan is this year to read more by him. My husband really likes him as well, so gives us something to talk about. And I do really like this edition. This is the Penguin Modern Classics, and it comes in a set. I have a set here I'm gonna show you, and this is just his essentials. So it has this little sleeve where you can keep it. It has his Animal Farm, which I read several times and I really like, and it has two books which I plan to read next, which I have not read yet, and it's The Shooting of Elephant and Down and Out in Paris and London. I don't know which one it's going to be, but one of those will be read this year, because honestly 1984 is a wonderful book. I knew I was gonna love it, but I haven't expected to fall head over heels as much as I did. Thank you guys for watching, and in the last video I think the main book I will talk about is Crime and Punishment, although I'm still grappling with how to talk about it, because it's such an amazing book and it's such a hard book to describe. So I think I'll try to think hard about it and maybe approach it tomorrow. But so far, every time I sat down and tried to record the video, it just failed dismally. But we'll see how it goes. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.